Hey everyone, Shin here. So after getting some feedback from you guys on the first video and some of the testing I was doing during the stream, I figured I would kind of go back and reconsider some of the options I had forgotten about when I was doing the initial testing of the PvP version of the HAMtastic build. So this video is going to be a revised build guide for that build. It's going to have some of the options that I found actually did perform better based on what you guys suggested and whatnot. So if you hadn't seen the previous video, I will put a link to it in the description below, but all of that information is either going to be the same as this video or outdated based on the changes. So if you want to look at it, go ahead, but if you're looking for the current version of the build, this is the video to take a look at. Now, as far as the role this build fills in a conquest match, this is a build you want to be moving around the map quickly with, decapping enemy points, capping them if you have enough time, and +1ing team fights, and helping your team win those fights through extra damage and cleave and high burst. This build is essentially like playing the role of a thief, but as a warrior, and as a result, I fully admit that you could very easily replace this build with a thief on a team. I'm not claiming that this is a new meta build, or that you should switch from Shoutbow to this if you're trying to bunker points or anything like that. This is just a fun and effective alternative to Shoutbow that I've been having a lot of fun with and a lot of success with in kind of the high tier, high ranking PvP, both in unranked and ranked queues. Alright, jumping into the specifics of the build, this build uses a hammer and greatsword for the weapons. It uses Healing Signet, Balance Stance, Endure Pain, Bull's Charge, and Rampage for the utilities. Endure Pain, you're going to want to keep this for the stun break and burst damage immunity. You are a fairly glassy character, so you're going to want to have that damage immunity up whenever you can and save yourself in bad situations. Rampage is ideal for the offense and control that it can bring to a fight, either solo or in a team fight, allowing you to stomp opponents, throw them around, and give yourself an immediate advantage when you jump into a fight, thereby allowing you to win that fight faster and start decapping and capping a point. It's very nice for a team fight because of the amount of damage it can put out, the fact that you don't get snared as much, and you can take a bit more damage, as well as throw the opponents around and give your team good focus targets to burst down and help win that team fight more quickly. For the traits, this build uses a 4-2-4-0-4 spread. For the strength traits, it uses Great Fortitude for some more health, and it uses Slashing Power for more damage. For arms, this build takes Furious Reaction for high Vigor uptime and high Fury uptime. For defense, this build takes Dogged March and Cleansing Ire. While there isn't any snare immunity with the PvP version of the build, the Dogged March still does help to give you regeneration and reduce the snares that you are going to be taking. And down in Discipline, this build takes Warrior Sprint and Mobile Strikes. Mobile Strikes is what makes up for the lack of snare immunity that the build would normally rely on in World v. World. Jumping over into the gearing, the build sigils are Hydromancy and Air on the Greatsword, and Doom and Impact on the Hammer. For the amulets, you want to use Berserkers, and the runes can be either Runes of Rage or Runes of the Pack. Now, I'll go into the pros and cons of the two rune sets that I found after testing, because I know there are a few of you who are probably giving weird looks at the video right now as to why I'm still including Rage runes. First off, as far as the damage difference between the builds, theoretically Pack should give a higher base damage for attacks than Rage will. However, after doing testing in both matches and on the test dummies using strike-by-strike damage comparisons using the same skills, for example, I used Rush several times in a row between the two rune sets to see what kind of numbers I was getting, and I saw very little to no difference between the damage I was getting as far as raw numbers go between the two builds. A factor to take into consideration as far as the lack of major difference between the two rune sets' damage output is the fact that while you may have higher base power running Pack, you have a higher crit modifier and a flat 5% damage boost while running Rage. While yes, the 5% damage boost is only while under the effect of Fury when you're running Rage, the fact that this build has so much Fury uptime and the fact that Runes of Rage boost the duration of Fury by so much means that you will have Fury up more often than not while running that set, and the power on Pack doesn't matter until you're fighting, meaning that it is effectively the same as that plus 5% damage boost. Now, when it comes to personal buffs that you're getting from the 4-piece bonus on both of these rune sets, in the case of Pack, it's 1 stack of Might, Fury, and Swiftness when you're hit, and in the case of Rage, it's Fury when you're hit. I am going to discount these two when you're dealing with one person on a point or you're otherwise alone, because in the case of Pack, the Might you gain from that proc is just the same as the extra power you're getting from the set as a whole, and when that's weighed against the damage boost from Rage, it gets canceled out. Again, similar numbers. And the swiftness that you get from that proc with the trait setup this build has is essentially irrelevant because you have Warrior Sprint. Yes, it's 8% faster, but in the grand scheme of things, when you're fighting on a point, that extra 8% doesn't really matter because you are changing directions a lot and you will be able to catch your target as it is. As well as the fact that the swiftness you gain from that proc only lasts 10 seconds, so you're not going to be able to have it for long enough to really get to another point before it runs out. And finally, with the Fury, both of them give you Fury, and while Rage does give you slightly more Fury, it's also on a slightly longer cooldown, so you can't give Rage the benefit in that situation. So the two 4-piece bonuses I'm also going to take out of the equation. And finally, taking one thing away from Pack exclusively, the Swiftness boost uptime, for the same reason as why I discounted Swiftness from the proc on the 4 set, the Swiftness boost up time doesn't matter all that much because the boost is only 8%, and while yes, as much mobility as you can get does matter, the difference in time that someone with Warrior Sprint versus someone with Swiftness can get between points is so small that it's not really worth considering in my opinion. So that really just leaves the decision of these two rune sets. The major difference between these two rune sets comes down to the extra precision you get base on Pack and the fact that the boons are shared on the 4-piece versus the 30% boon duration on Fury that you get from Runes of Rage. In solo situations, such as when you're approaching a point after a team fight, or you have 1v1 someone on your home and then you decide you want to go decap their far point, I feel Rage is superior because of the fact that you can carry the Fury boon around with you after building it up through fighting, either through a team fight and your allies giving you Fury, or your own Arcing Slices and Fierce Reaction and the proc on the rune set. Having this extra Fury at the get-go that you would otherwise not have with Pack allows you to have a 60% crit chance running into fights as opposed to just a 45 from Pack. However, when it comes to actual team fighting itself, I feel Pack is superior because of the fact that you are generating boons for your allies. You're generating Swiftness, Fury, and Might for everyone around you as well as yourself. And while Swiftness and Might may not matter that much for you, it definitely matters for your allies. Considering these two things, the nutshell difference that I see between these two rune sets is Pack is for in-the-moment team support fighting, and Rage is for solo longevity of Fury. Alright, now as far as the gameplay goes, as I mentioned earlier, in Conquest, this build is basically played as though you would play a thief. You want to be moving around between points, decapping when the opponent's not there, capping if you have enough time, running in and +1ing team fights, adding to those 1v1s and turning them into 2v1s, or otherwise making the numbers situation in your team's favor and pushing the other team off the point or put them back on respawn. I was also able to test the build in Stronghold. The build has a lot more versatility in that mode. It can be used for almost every offensive role you can think of in Stronghold. You can use it for running supply back and forth. You can use it for clearing out waves of NPCs as they're coming down your defense lane. You can use it for getting to hero spawns quickly. You can use it for killing gate guards of the opposing team. You can use it for lord fights. You can use it for team fights. You can use it for clearing out the center where everyone is gathering supply. In general, if there is something that extra damage and mobility can help with, this build will benefit you greatly in Stronghold. Alright, and that is it for the revised version of the PvP variant of the HAMtastic build. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, hopefully you enjoyed the build if you decided to try it out. I know I spent a while explaining the whole Pack versus Rage thing, but I wanted to justify why Rage is viable in my opinion for this setup. I did switch the amulets as a lot of people suggested in the feedback from the previous video. It is definitely Zerker amulet for the foreseeable future. And with that, I will see you around the stream or in the next video. Take care, everyone.